Chapter 17. Collapse Beneath the Lights. Rowan's perspective. The weekend came without sympathy. Rowan found himself in an elaborate ballroom shimmering in gold and white, a theater of wealth, cameras, and calculated smiles. Chandeliers burned above him, but Rowan felt nothing of their warmth. His tie was knotted too tight, his heartbeat too loud. The scent of expensive cologne, polished floors, and political tension pressed down like a stone waiting to break him. He'd been awake for nearly 36 hours. He could still hear the words of the last debate in his skull, the whisper of his father's voice telling him to stand taller, speak sharper, never falter, be an alpha. And then there were the dreams that left his throat raw, his hands shaking. Dreams of his mask cracking in front of everyone, of the alpha scent booster on his skin failing mid-interview, of Alek's eyes like cut glass turning cold with disgust. But Alek had not turned cold. He had turned quiet. Watching him more often, asking questions that sounded like concern but landed like revelations. And tonight, at this towering fundraiser, Alek needed to be seen, needed to shake hands, charm donors, and keep the illusion of control in a city watching for weakness. Rowan had planned every second of this evening, every smile, every quote, every deflection. He couldn't afford to slip.
Rowan.
Alek's voice came low beside him, velvet and steel.
You look pale. Did you sleep?
I'm fine,
Rowan lied, as smoothly as ever. He adjusted his cufflinks, posture perfect, scent carefully balanced with the alpha chemical formula he'd used for years. The mask still fit, but it was starting to burn. Alek's hand moved to his shoulder briefly.
You don't need to prove anything tonight. Let me...
I said I'm fine.
The words came sharper than intended, and he immediately regretted it. Alek's lavender gaze darkened, but he said nothing. The governor's entourage approached, and Rowan straightened again. Cameras flashed. Applause swelled. He was the strategist, the invisible spine of Alek's campaign, and everyone in the room knew his name now. But as he stepped toward the podium, the lights seemed too hot, too bright, too accusatory. The sound of clinking glasses and laughter stretched thin and distant. He blinked once, twice. His vision twisted. Alek's outline blurred, that unmistakable crystalline lavender hue vanishing in the gold haze. Then everything went black. When Rowan came to, the world was quiet. Silence surrounded him. The hum of an air purifier, the soft warmth of fabric beneath him, and the scent, not of antiseptic or strangers, but of Alek. Black cedar and cold, clean ozone filled his senses, bringing him to the present. He was lying on a couch in a dimly lit penthouse suite, the city's skyline blurring into watercolor and lights through the rain-streaked window. He tried to sit up, but a firm hand pressed to his shoulder.
Don't,
Alek said softly. His voice was steady, but his face, he looked pale, strained, and utterly furious.
You passed out mid-speech. Do you have any idea how terrifying that was?
Rowan swallowed hard.
How long?
3 hours,
Alek said, pinching the bridge of his nose in frustration.
You're dehydrated, running a fever, and completely exhausted.
His tone sharpened on that last word. He said nothing of the physician finding his system overtaxed. that he'd been using those chemical enhancers for way too long. Rowan closed his eyes. Shame burned and knotted through him, making his thoughts dark and his mask falter.
I'm fine. I can work.
No, goddammit, no!
Alek interrupted, kneeling in front of him now. His hands braced against the couch, his gaze stern.
This ends here. Your personal battle for perfection is unraveling you, and you're too valuable for me to ignore that you're burnt out.
I am valuable because of my work.
Rowan snapped before he could stop himself.
You can't bench me because I have a mild fever and skipped a few glasses of water. The city needs you, Alek. It needs a real alpha who gives a crap about them. They follow you because you have the best campaign manager in Ridgecrest, and because you fight. And
His voice broke.
I can't let you down.
Silence stretched. Rain lashed against the glass, punctuated by the distant sound of thunder. Alek looked carefully at Rowan, his expression becoming tender as he exhaled slowly, then reached out, brushing a damp lock of hair from Rowan's forehead.
You didn't let me down,
he said quietly.
but you will if you keep destroying yourself like this.
Rowan stared at him, throat tightening. There was something raw in Alek's eyes. The same intensity he used at podiums, only it had turned softer, more personal. It terrified Rowan more than any crowd witnessing his collapse from exhaustion.
I've already arranged for the campaign staff to handle the next event.
Alek continued.
You're staying here tonight. My physician will check in again before dawn.
Alek.
This isn't a request.
That familiar command in his tone made Rowan fall silent. He looked away, jaw tight.
You shouldn't have brought me here. The press.
They won't know.
Alek said firmly.
And even if they did, I'd stand by it. I won't watch you burn yourself alive just to meet expectations I don't even share.
The rain softened outside, tapping gently against the window. Rowan's body finally gave in, sinking back into the cushions. For the first time in months, he allowed himself to fully relax. Alek rose and walked toward the window, his reflection dark against the glass.
You once told me strategy is about survival,
he said quietly.
Maybe start applying that to yourself.
Rowan managed a weak laugh, his voice rasping.
I'm trying.
Alek turned, eyes softening.
Then try harder. For me.
The weight of that "for me" lodged in Rowan's chest, heavy and unshakable. He turned his face into the pillow before Alek could see the rising heat in his cheeks. A long, slow sigh followed, letting the exhaustion pull him under again, pleasantly aware of Alek's scent nearby. Steady, protective, present, safe. For the first time since the campaign began, he slept without nightmares. Chapter 17.5 Collapse Beneath the Lights. Alek's Perspective. The ballroom was still a heady blend of whispered intrigue, expensive perfume, and potent pheromones when the lights dimmed. But Alek heard nothing. Not the applause, not the murmurs, not the chaos of aides moving to manage the moment. All he could see is Rowan collapsing. It wasn't graceful. Rowan's microphone clattered. His knees hit the stage floor. For one horrifying second, Alek thought the man he trusted most was dead. He was across the stage before anyone else reached him, the scent of burning ozone and panic filling his lungs. Cameras flashed. Aides shouted for space. The governor's entourage tried to salvage the moment, but Alek didn't care. He lifted Rowan into his arms like something precious that was about to break. Maybe already had.
"Get the car!"
Alek barked, his voice sharp enough to still the room.
"Now!"
No hospital. No public scene. The press would eat it alive. He didn't need headlines about his campaign manager's collapse or drug exhaustion. He needed Rowan safe. So he did the only thing that made sense. He took him home. By the time the physician finished his examination in the penthouse suite, Alek had aged 10 years. He stood by the window, sleeves rolled up, eyes burning from exhaustion and anger, yes, but not at Rowan. At himself. The physician closed his bag quietly.
Dehydration, high cortisol levels, prolonged chemical exposure from the scent enhancers. He's been overusing them for years, most likely.
Alek's jaw clenched, his upper lip curling with disgust, causing his brow to furrow.
"Will he recover?"
With rest, yes. But if he continues masking his natural scent like this...
The doctor hesitated, looking at Rowan asleep on the couch.
He's going to cause permanent imbalance to his system. It's a wonder he lasted this long. I've given him a mild sedative to help him sleep. Be sure he gets proper nutrients and adequate liquids.
Alek nodded curtly.
"Thank you, doctor. Leave the report with me."
When the door closed, the silence felt different. Private. Heavy with the smell of rain against the glass, and Rowan's faint, unmasked scent finally bleeding through the chemical layers. It was softer than Alek expected, like spring rain. Real. Sweet in a fresh, earthy way. He crossed the room slowly, kneeling beside the couch. Rowan's breathing had steadied. His hands were lax, his brow smooth for the first time in weeks. Alek reached out, hesitated, then brushed his thumb across Rowan's wrist where the faintest pulse beat beneath skin. A place he had seen Rowan massage when overstressed to keep his beta scent at bay.
"Damn you,"
he whispered, his voice hoarse.
"You were supposed to trust me."
He remembered every conversation they'd had about control, about performance. Rowan had built his entire identity around strength and dominance, not realizing that Alek had seen through it long ago. Or had he? The little gestures, the restraint in Rowan's posture when other alphas entered the room, the fatigue that never quite left his eyes. And now the secret was eating him alive. Eli arrived an hour later, looking grim.
"The press already has photos,"
he said quietly.
"but our team's framing it as exhaustion due to overwork. You'll need to make a short statement by morning."
Alek didn't turn from the window.
"Tell them he's recovering. And tell them I said this campaign stands because of him."
Eli hesitated, then glanced toward Rowan's sleeping form.
"You care about him a lot, don't you, sir?"
Alek's reflection met Eli's in the glass.
"He's the reason I still believe in this campaign."
Eli glanced at the floor, then back up at Alek.
"Then you should be careful with him, sir. He's bleeding in more ways than one."
Alek frowned.
"What do you mean?"
Eli sighed.
"I've seen this kind of burnout before, when someone fights their nature for too long. You can patch the wounds, but unless he stops pretending, he'll collapse again. He doesn't need a commander right now. He needs someone who will let him breathe. Let him be himself."
Alek didn't reply. Eli's words cut deep because they were true. After Eli left, Alek went back to the couch and sat down on the edge, elbows on his knees. For a long time, he simply watched Rowan sleep. The city lights painted the room in silver and gold, moving across the curve of Rowan's jaw, the loosened collar of his Alpha suit. The same suit he wore to protect himself from a world that demanded dominance and punished accordingly.
You shouldn't have to live like this,
Alek murmured. He leaned back against the couch, exhaustion tugging at him too. The scent of Rowan's sweet rain on paper and his own cold cedar was thick in the air. He reached out, gently adjusting the blanket over Rowan's shoulders.
Rest, my strategist.
Chapter 18. The Lie We Keep. The first thing Rowan felt when consciousness returned was wrongness. The sheets were not the coarse, sterile cotton of a hotel. They were far too soft. The air was quiet except for the hushed city traffic beyond the window. He blinked, once, twice, till his eyes adjusted and the blur of sleep cleared. The ceiling was too high, curtains drawn but edged with morning light. He had been moved from the sofa to a private bedroom. Then the second thing hit him. His briefcase. It sat beside him on the crisp white bed, as out of place as an AK-47 on a church pew. He froze. Every muscle went still, the instinctive, primal kind of stillness that came from decades of hiding. A cold rush of panic worked its way up his spine and bleeding into his chest, burning where breath should have been. He was in Alek's room. Alek's penthouse. And here was his briefcase that held the secret of his entire identity, the locked one he carried everywhere. His gaze darted to the door, then back to the black leather. No sign of tampering, but that didn't mean anything. Alek Silverson could buy half the city's security tech with a phone call. He could have had the lock decoded while Rowan was unconscious. And if he had, if Alek had opened it, that meant he knew. His secret had been compromised. The expired scent patches, the beta health supplements, the falsified medical certificate from the Institute. Every single piece of proof that Rowan Adams was a fraud, wrapped up in a tailored Alpha suit. He pressed a trembling hand over his mouth, trying to slow his breathing. He'd handled political disasters, full-blown media fires, but this was a different kind of ruin. Personal. Irreversible. He reached for the case, inspecting the lock with a lawyer's precision. Still sealed. Still perfect. But doubt had a way of rotting through logic. He could feel Alek's presence everywhere, in the faint musk of cedar and ozone, in the orderliness of the room, in the fact that someone had tended to him. Someone who knew. The thought made his throat tighten. He rose too quickly, swaying slightly as a sharp pain throbbed at his temple. Someone, likely Alek, had cleaned him up, changed him out of his suit and into a slightly oversized soft gray sweater. He held it to his nose. Clean, laundry soap. Alek. The faint smell of antiseptic lingered in the room. No one had ever taken care of him before. Not like this. Not without a demand in return. He found Alek in his penthouse office adjoining the main suite. The Alpha was standing near the window, sunlight cutting gold across his shoulders. He was in a three-piece navy suit, the power of it deliberate, regal, breathtaking.
Make the arrangements.
While Rowan, the Alpha mask flawless again, every movement calm, every glance calculated, every word precise, was just a fraud. Who was he talking to just now? Rowan wondered as he entered the office. What arrangements? Alek ended his phone call and turned, his expression smooth and politically perfect. No anger, no pity, just restraint.
You're awake,
Alek said simply, voice deep and even.
Good. The doctor said rest, but I know better than to think you'll follow orders.
Rowan tried to smile. It came out thin.
You do know me too well.
Alek, however, did smile. He did know Rowan, more than the man would allow himself to know. He crossed the room with unhurried steps, handing him a folder.
Everything from last night. My team contained the footage. The press statement is neutralized. Exhaustion from overwork. Nothing damaging.
Rowan took the file. His fingers brushed Alek's. Too brief. Too electric.
You didn't have to handle that.
I did.
Alek's tone left no room for argument.
You are part of this campaign. Your name, your work, your reputation. All of it matters.
The words landed like a paradox in Rowan's gut. Reputation. He wanted to laugh. What reputation? A beta wrapped in lies? Working beside the future mayor of Eastridge, watching him up close only made him feel more of a fraud. An alpha he could never be. He swallowed instead.
I appreciate your discretion, sir.
Alek's eyes narrowed at the formality. Sir. It was a wall, a plea, and a wound all in one word.
You don't need to thank me,
Alek said quietly.
Just take care of yourself.
Something in his voice cracked, but Rowan couldn't afford to notice. Couldn't afford to see anything but the need to maintain the illusion. He straightened, adjusting his cuffs. Gesture. Armor. Mask.
The event was a failure. I'll schedule damage control with the donor board. The Alpha Coalition will expect you to appear composed by Friday's luncheon.
Rowan.
The command in Alek's tone stopped him cold. When he met Alek's gaze, there it was. The waiting. That steady, patient gaze that saw every wall Rowan built and refused to tear down. Alek wasn't playing politics now. He was silently begging for something else. Trust. But Rowan wasn't ready. Not yet. He forced himself to look away, focusing instead on the reports in his hands.
I'll get these revisions done immediately.
Alek didn't move to stop him, though his jaw flexed imperceptibly.
Fine,
he said finally.
But you'll work from here today. My orders. That's why I had your briefcase brought in.
Sir, I don't think...
You don't need to think right now.
Alek interrupted softly.
You need to recover.
Rowan's chest clenched around his heart. There was warmth in those words. Dangerous, disarming, damnable warmth. It pulled at him like a powerful magnet he couldn't escape, that whispered, "You can stop pretending." He looked up again, meeting Alek's gaze, just for a heartbeat, and saw the truth there. Alek knew, and he was still waiting for Rowan to come forward, to trust him enough to tear away the façade. But Rowan couldn't. The shame was still too raw. So he nodded once, wordless, and retreated to the safety of obedience. As he turned to leave, Alek's voice stopped him again.
Rowan,
he said, then took a breath and stilled, like he had decided to take a last-minute detour.
Please, get more rest. You're important, and I need you.
The words landed in Rowan's chest like an ache that would never heal. He didn't answer. He couldn't. But as he walked away, briefcase in hand, his fingers trembled against the cool leather handle. Because deep down, he already knew that when the truth finally came, it wouldn't destroy them. It would define them. Chapter 19. The Mist Between Them. The campaign calendar was sacred. Every hour accounted for, every appearance orchestrated, worshipping the clock. That's why when Alek told Rowan to clear the next 3 days, it immediately raised alarms.
3 days?
Rowan repeated, scanning the tablet in disbelief.
That's not feasible. We're losing momentum with the Jackson donors, and the East Summit debate prep is...
Alek cut him off with that calm, immovable voice of authority.
We've been invited to a private charity event up north. Old money, discreet money, funds that finance entire campaigns under the radar. We can't afford to ignore it.
Rowan looked up from the screen. Alek's expression was unreadable. Composed, almost too controlled. There was something off about the way he leaned against the desk, hands in his pockets, like he was trying to convince himself as much as Rowan.
Which donor?
Rowan pressed. Alek's lips lifted.
One who prefers privacy. You'll see soon enough.
It wasn't an answer. It was a move, one of Alek's signature diversions dressed as confidence. Normally, Rowan would call him on it, but the exhaustion still lingered behind his eyes. The nightmares, the careful calibration of his façade, the ache in his chest that never quite left, made arguing feel like dragging his own body through glass. So he nodded.
Fine. I'll clear the schedule.
Alek's gaze softened for just a moment, enough to betray the truth behind the plan. This wasn't strategy. This was concern wrapped in plausible deniability. The drive to the northern coast was long and quiet. Pines lined the narrow roads, their scent crisp and clean through the cracked window. Fog drifted across the highway like smoke, swallowing the car every few miles. Alek would flick the wipers periodically to clear the windshield. Rowan sat beside him in the passenger seat, tablet dark in his lap, pretending to study the distant coastline whenever Alek looked his way. It wasn't that he didn't appreciate the gesture. He did. Deeply. Too deeply. And that was the problem. No one had ever done something like this for him. Not colleagues, not friends, certainly not family. Rowan had spent his life being the beta who had to act like an alpha to survive. There was no space for vulnerability, no softness that didn't come with consequences. Alek, though, he didn't seem to want to expose him. He wanted to protect him. And that terrified Rowan more than any threat he'd ever faced, more than his own father. When they arrived, the inn sat on a cliff that looked like it had been carved by the wind. Stone, wood, glass, all swallowed by pine and mist. The sound of waves echoed below, faint and eternal. Inside, the lobby smelled of cedar and firewood. There were no cameras, no reporters, just quiet.
Relax,
Alek said as they checked in. His voice was low, familiar.
Think of it as strategic networking.
Rowan managed a dry smile.
You're terrible at lying.
You're terrible at resting.
The silence that followed said everything words couldn't. As they ascended the stairs, Rowan caught their reflection in the glass. Alek walking ahead, broad-shouldered and self-assured, the picture of a man born to lead. Rowan trailing a step behind, the strategist with his invisible armor slipping. For the first time in years, he let himself imagine what it might feel like to stop pretending. To let someone, this someone, see him without the mask. But the fantasy vanished as quickly as it came. He couldn't risk it. Not when one wrong move could destroy everything Alek had built. Everything they had built. He tightened his grip on his briefcase.
Just business,
He murmured under his breath.
keep it business.
But even as the thick fog rolled outside, and Alek's safe presence filled the space between them, Rowan couldn't shake the feeling that this trip was the beginning of something dangerous. Something neither of them could turn back from once it started.